Have you ever heard a story so powerful, so haunting, that it changes the way you look at loyalty, courage, and the silent bond between man and dog forever? Tonight, you will. What began as a routine patrol in a vast and lonely forest would soon turn into a scene no one could have imagined. A scene so cruel, so unthinkable, that only a miracle could decide whether a man lived or died. And the miracle came on 4 legs. The forest was breathing in silence. Tall pines stood like sentinels, their needles whispering in the wind. The air was thick, damp with the aftertaste of rain, and the evening light was fading fast. Somewhere far in the distance, an owl hooted, and the sound of dripping water from moss-covered branches fell like the ticking of a slow, merciless clock. Time was running out for someone. But no one knew, no one, except one dog. His name was Rex, a K9 German Shepherd. A dog trained for search, for rescue, for danger, and for loyalty above all else. His coat glistened in patches where the rain had dampened it, his nose twitched with the scent of something unusual, and his ears flicked at sounds hidden deep in the forest. Rex was not just wandering, he was looking, searching, driven by instincts sharper than any man could possess. And then, he stopped. The silence broke with a faint metallic sound. A clink, a chain rattling against bark. Rex's body stiffened. His tail froze, ears straight, eyes narrowed. He sniffed the ground, the air, every step more cautious than the last. Something was wrong here, very, very wrong. As Rex moved closer, the smell reached him. Sweat, blood, fear, the combination that only told one story, pain. And in that moment, his pace quickened, paws pressing deeper into the mud, his breath stronger, until finally, through a break in the trees, he saw it. A man, but not just any man. A forest ranger. His uniform was torn, his hat gone, his body slumped against the rough bark of a massive oak tree. But what froze Rex's eyes were the chains, thick, rusted chains, that bound the man's arms behind him, his chest pressed cruelly against the trunk. His face was pale, lips cracked, eyes half open, the faintest whisper of life left inside him. The ranger tried to speak, but his voice was nothing more than a broken rasp. "Help, please." Rex's heart pounded. He barked, a deep, commanding sound that echoed through the trees, as though declaring to the forest itself that he had found something that could not be ignored. He circled the man, nose pressed to the chains, teeth grazing the cold metal. He pulled, tugged, growled in frustration. But the chains did not move. They were locked, merciless, cutting into the ranger's wrists until the skin beneath was raw and bleeding. The ranger's eyes filled with tears, not of weakness, but of hopelessness. "Go," he whispered. "Save yourself." But Rex did not move. His training, his nature, his soul, all told him one thing: don't leave. Not now, not ever. The forest ranger's mind drifted in and out of consciousness, but every time he opened his eyes, he saw the same thing. The dog, watching him, guarding him, refusing to abandon him. Night was falling now, and the shadows stretched like dark fingers across the forest floor. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. Somewhere out there, whoever had done this could still be near. Perhaps they were watching, waiting, enjoying the suffering of a man left to die in the woods. The thought made Rex restless. His growls deepened, his gaze darted into the darkness, as if daring anyone to come closer. But no one came, only the wind, only the dark, only the sound of chains rattling every time the ranger shifted in pain. Minutes felt like hours, hours like an eternity. Rex did not leave. His body pressed against the ranger's legs as though to give him warmth, his eyes never leaving his face. The bond was unspoken but unbreakable. One man, trapped in the cruel grip of human malice. One dog, standing guard against time, against fear, against death itself. But what Rex did next was something no one could have expected. The night in the forest had grown heavier, like a blanket pressing down on everything beneath it. Shadows stretched longer, the sound of the wind through the trees sharper, colder. The ranger's breath was shallow now, every exhale leaving a faint cloud of white in the freezing air. His body trembled, not just from pain, but from the merciless cold creeping into his bones. Rex paced in circles, his paws leaving marks in the damp soil, his eyes darting from the chains to the darkness of the trees. His instincts screamed at him, something is wrong, something is near. He barked, sharp and loud, the kind of bark that carried both warning and desperation. The ranger tried to lift his head. His lips quivered as he whispered, why me? His eyes closed, and suddenly, his mind wasn't in the forest anymore. He was somewhere else. A flashback. Sunlight. His cabin on the edge of the reserve. The smell of fresh coffee. The laughter of his daughter as she played with their family dog in the yard. Life had been simple, peaceful. He had been proud of his job, protecting the forest, the wildlife, and the people who came through it. But that pride had enemies. He had stopped poachers. He had reported illegal logging. He had made enemies in the shadows, men who thrived on destruction and greed. And now, here he was. Bound, left to die, forgotten in the middle of nowhere. Rex whined, pressing his head against the ranger's knee, as if to pull him back from his fading memory. The dog's body was warm, his presence grounding, his eyes glowing like twin lanterns in the dark. He wasn't going to let his human, any human, die this way. Rex pulled again at the chains, biting and growling, his sharp teeth scraping sparks off the rusty metal. He dug at the base of the tree, as though trying to find where the chains were rooted. His claws tore at the frozen ground until his paws were raw, but he did not stop. He couldn't stop. Suddenly, a sound. Crunch. Snow. Footsteps. Rex froze, his body stiff, his ears pricked high. He growled low, the kind of growl that came from deep in the chest, primal and threatening. The ranger opened his eyes weakly, his voice a whisper, "He's here." From between the trees, a figure emerged. A man, his coat heavy, his face hidden under a shadowy hood. He stood tall, silent, watching. His boots pressed into the snow with slow, deliberate steps. In one hand, he held something that caught the faint moonlight, metal, sharp. Rex barked furiously, lunging forward, teeth bared, ready to attack if the man came closer. His body was fire and fury, every muscle trembling with the urge to protect. The ranger shook his head weakly. "No, you can't fight him, he'll kill you." But Rex did not listen. His loyalty was stronger than fear. His growls cut through the silence of the forest, echoing far, a promise that he would not let harm touch the man chained to the tree. The stranger laughed, a cold, hollow laugh that sliced through the night air. "So," he said, his voice cruel, dripping with satisfaction, "they sent a dog to guard you. How fitting." The ranger's chest tightened. He knew this voice. The man was one of them, the poachers he had once stopped, the men who had sworn revenge. And now, here he was, standing over him like a predator savoring its prey. Rex barked again, louder, angrier, his body lowering into attack stance. The man tilted his head, amused. "Do you really think you can stop me, dog?" The ranger tried to speak, but his strength was fading. His words came out broken. "Rex, don't let him." And then, the man took another step forward. Rex lunged. His bark exploded into the night. His teeth flashed in the pale moonlight. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. And at that exact moment, from deep within the forest, a second sound rose. Not footsteps, not chains, but something else entirely, the distant howl of more dogs. Closer, louder, growing. The stranger's eyes narrowed. His smirk faded. He looked around, unease flickering in his gaze. The forest was no longer silent. It was alive with the sound of loyalty, of fury, of more than one protector racing through the snow. The ranger's eyes widened with the faintest glimmer of hope. "They're coming," he whispered. But would they come in time? The stranger gripped the metal in his hand tighter. Rex growled louder, ready to strike. The night held its breath. And then, darkness swallowed everything. The forest was no longer quiet. The man in the shadows tightened his grip on the metal tool in his hand, eyes flicking nervously toward the sound of howls echoing from the distance. The night wind carried their voices like a storm approaching, and for the first time, his confidence cracked. Rex stood in front of the ranger, fur bristling, teeth bared, a low growl rumbling from deep within his chest. His eyes never blinked, never wavered. He was ready to fight, even if it cost him his life. The ranger tried to lift his head, his voice breaking through the cold air. "Rex, please, don't." His words were weak, but his meaning was clear. He couldn't bear to see the dog sacrifice himself. But Rex was beyond words now. His entire being was locked on the stranger. Every step the man took, Rex matched with a growl, his paws clawing into the snow. Then the man spoke, his voice low, taunting. "You think they'll get here in time? Those dogs, by the time they do, you'll both be gone." He took another step forward. Rex lunged. The chain on the ranger rattled violently as the dog threw himself forward, stopping just short of the man's leg. His teeth snapped shut with a sound that cracked the silence like a whip. The stranger staggered back, eyes flashing with anger. Fine, the man hissed. If it's a fight you want. He raised his hand, the metal glinting in the moonlight. A knife. Sharp. Deadly. The ranger's heart nearly stopped. He tried to cry out, but only a broken whisper left his throat. No, Rex barked, the sound echoing through the forest with a force that shook the night. And then, the howls grew louder, closer, the sound of paws pounding against snow, fast, relentless. Through the shadows, shapes began to appear. 3 German shepherds, powerful, charging through the mist like spirits of vengeance. Their breaths were steam in the cold air, their eyes locked on the figure near the tree. The man froze, his bravado slipping. No, this can't. But it was real. The ranger's vision blurred, but he saw them. 3 more dogs, loyal, fearless, rushing toward him. For the first time since his torment began, a spark of hope flickered in his chest. The stranger cursed under his breath, stepping back toward the trees. This isn't over, he spat, his voice trembling with rage. He turned, disappearing into the forest shadows just as the dogs closed in. Rex barked furiously after him, but he did not chase. His duty was here. His duty was the man. The 3 new shepherds reached the clearing, circling the ranger, their noses twitching, their eyes full of urgency. They barked, whined, pressed against him, sniffing at the chains that held him. Rex moved alongside them, guiding them, showing them where the pain was. But the chains, they were unbreakable. The dogs pulled, scratched, bit, but the metal only rattled, cutting deeper into the ranger's wrists. His cry of pain echoed in the forest, and the dogs froze, whimpering, their eyes turning to Rex for guidance. The ranger's vision dimmed. He saw them all, 4 shepherds standing around him, refusing to leave. His heart swelled with sorrow and gratitude all at once. Tears streamed down his face, freezing on his skin. Why, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Why won't you leave me? Save yourselves. But the dogs did not move. They stayed, loyal, immovable. The ranger's eyes closed again, his mind slipping into another memory. His daughter, smiling in the sunlight. Her small arms wrapping around his neck. Daddy, promise me you'll always come home, she had said. And he had promised. But now, chained to this tree, he feared he had broken that promise. The forest grew colder, the snow thicker, the ranger's body weaker. His breath was shallow, his words faint. Please, if anyone is listening. The dogs huddled closer, their warmth pressing against him, as if to shield him from death itself. But then, a noise, the crunch of boots on snow. Not one pair, several, heavy, slow, deliberate. The dogs froze, ears pricked, growls rising like thunder. Rex stood tall, his body in front of the ranger, his teeth flashing. The sound grew louder, shadows moved through the trees. More men, not just one this time. The ranger forced his eyes open, his voice cracking with dread. No, not them, not again. And then the first figure stepped into the moonlight. The forest was still, holding its breath as new shadows emerged from the darkness. Heavy boots pressed into the snow, breaking the silence with a rhythm that echoed like a drum of doom. The dogs stiffened, their growls low, their bodies tense, forming a living wall in front of the ranger. The ranger, barely conscious, forced his eyes open. His vision blurred, but he could see them, 3 figures stepping into the clearing, faces hidden by scarves, eyes glinting with cruel intent. His heart sank. These were not rescuers. These were the men who had put him here. One of them chuckled. Look at this, he said, voice dripping with mockery. The forest hero, chained up like prey. And look, he's got himself a little army of dogs. The others laughed, their sound cruel and hollow. Rex barked sharply, the kind of bark that cracked through the night like a warning shot. The other shepherds joined him, a chorus of defiance. The men stopped in their tracks, uneasy. Careful, one muttered. These aren't strays. They're trained. The leader sneered. So what? They're still just dogs. And dogs can bleed. He stepped closer. The shepherds erupted into furious barking, teeth flashing, their bodies ready to spring. Rex stood at the center, eyes locked on the man, his growl a vow. The ranger tried to speak, but his voice was a whisper. Please, don't hurt them. But his plea was swallowed by the night. The leader raised his arm, metal flashing in his hand, a knife, long and sharp. He took another step forward. And then it happened. Rex lunged. With a speed and force born of desperation and love, he launched himself at the man. His teeth sank into the arm that held the knife, the man screaming as blood splattered onto the snow. The other dogs followed, their bodies a storm of loyalty, knocking the men back, their growls feral, their fury unmatched. The clearing erupted into chaos. The poachers cursed, kicking, swinging, stumbling in the snow as 4 shepherds tore into their defenses. The night was filled with the sounds of snarling, shouting, chains rattling, and the desperate struggle of good against cruelty. The ranger's heart pounded as he watched through fading eyes. He wanted to help, to stand, to fight, but his body was broken, his strength gone. All he could do was pray that the dogs would win. And then, through the madness, came another sound. Sirens. Faint at first, then louder. Lights breaking through the trees. Flashing red and blue cutting through the dark. Voices shouting, boots pounding against snow. The poachers froze. It's the rangers. One shouted. Run! They tore themselves free, stumbling back into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. Rex chased for a few steps, barking furiously, but then stopped. His duty was not vengeance. His duty was here. The lights grew closer, rangers poured into the clearing, their flashlights sweeping the scene. And then, they saw him, their fellow ranger, chained, bleeding, barely alive. God, get the chains. Hurry, one of them cried. Hands worked frantically, tools cutting through the metal that had bound him for so long. The dogs whined, pressed against the ranger, refusing to move until the chains fell free. At last, with a snap, the lock gave way. The ranger collapsed forward, straight into Rex's body. The dog steadied him, whining softly, licking his face, as though begging him not to leave. The ranger's eyes fluttered open. For the first time in days, he was free. His breath was shallow, but he managed to whisper one word. Rex. Tears welled in his eyes as he looked at the dogs surrounding him. You saved me. He tried to lift his hand, weak and trembling, resting it on Rex's head. Tell, my daughter, I kept my promise. The ranger's body went limp. His eyes closed. The rangers screamed his name, rushing to his side, working to revive him. The dogs whimpered, pressing closer, their cries echoing into the night. And then, a miracle. The ranger's chest rose. Slowly, weakly, but it rose. He was alive. Barely. The rangers lifted him onto a stretcher, wrapping blankets around his shivering body. Rex walked beside him, never leaving his side. The other dogs followed, their paws silent in the snow. As they carried him out of the forest, the moon broke through the clouds, casting silver light on the scene. The chains lay abandoned in the snow, broken. The forest was quiet again, but it carried the echo of what had happened, the echo of loyalty, courage, and love that had refused to die. The ranger lived, but he would never forget. And neither would Rex. Because in the heart of that forest, on a night when cruelty tried to win, a dog's loyalty had written a story that would be remembered forever. And for those who heard it, it would be impossible not to cry.